retour dans cette nouvelle session.
Welcome back to this new session. The room is filling up. We're meeting with you online as well. And so on the tab Interactiveness, you have a satisfaction question. We'd like your feedback, of course. And if you like, you can fill out the feedback now, but this afternoon, otherwise, you can continue to ask questions of the speakers. In 2024, more than half of the planet is voting or continuing to vote. We can think of our friends who are voting now. We know that people have been won over by simplicity, and one of the collateral victims in this case is the fight against climate change due to human activity. In Europe, even we see there are ambitious environmental regulations, some 12.6 million tons of textile waste. You know, the European Union would like to maybe show a new way to approach the problem by the European Union, and we can talk about this issue, try to see how maybe the European Union could become a model for other powers in the field of environmental transition. We're going to talk with a speaker about the subject of Europe, and Pascal Boniface from Iris. So we're going to talk about the European Union here in the face of other countries, US and China.
Pardon. Alors, Pascal.
So, Pascal, welcome. Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for taking part in this important day. We're talking of a lot of subjects, but this afternoon we're going to be talking about Europe. And with you, I think we need to perhaps redefine Europe when we speak of Europe. We said that Europe had one of the boldest projects on the subject. What is Europe's role here? You know that Europe is the triumph of the determination. You know, for countries which for years have been at war, etc., we decided to create a peaceful area. And despite everything that has happened between countries like France and Germany, etc., with Europe, we can hope to encourage others. You know, 27 countries in Europe today, which does create a lot of skepticism inside and out. You know, the number of countries which are candidates to membership, despite their geography, we see that inside the European institutions and populations, there's a bit of fatigue with regards to Europe, because a lot of populations, when they vote, unless they abstain, they vote for parties which have programs which are Eurosceptic. So all of this, in fact, has led to a certain nostalgia and melancholy, a great deal of fatigue of where with regards to Europe. This has emerged little by little. No, we've seen this emerging for some time. You know, we've seen this with the elections. The rate of abstentions has increased, of course. You know, we see that, with Maastricht, the referendum, you know, the various treaties, etc. As Europe has been enlarged, it's lost a bit of its identity and strength. You need to make more compromise when you're 27 instead of 12. It's more difficult to make European action visible. And, you know, Europe is has to fight with, the national groups that tend to say that when things go well, it's thanks to the national level, and when things go wrong, it's Europe. Yes, you know, the same people who are asking for regulations to protect their sector. You know that a number of sectors, there are caricatures, of course, but you know, the European Commission is a machine that needs to produce standards for the Europe to exist, but there are standards which are highly protective. I think everyone's happy to be able to use euros when you travel in Europe, you know, and to be able to have a telephone, a cell phone bill, not astronomical when you've gone to a neighboring country for a couple of days, for a weekend, etc. I think we need to look at all the benefits Europe has brought for the European citizens. And at the same time, there's still a great deal of mistrust vis-à-vis Europe. There are weaknesses as well. We can see today, you know, 27 is difficult to reach a single position. We see Ukraine, we see the Middle East. The Middle East is worse because you have countries which vote for, against, and abstentions. On Ukraine, we can say that with the exception of Slovakia and Hungary, everyone agrees to help Ukraine against Russia, but we don't have the means. Of course, in the US, if Trump is elected tonight or tomorrow, we're going to be a bit at a loss. We won't know how he's going to act. But at the same time, even if we are 27 member countries of the European Union, the way the Baltic countries or Poland consider Russia, the way France, Spain, Germany, and Italy look at it, it's different. History has left its traces. The Soviet occupation of Poland and Eastern Europe has left traces as well. And then you have two countries in Europe, France and Germany, which because of internal policies have difficulties. They're divided. They don't agree on the budget. And this is why we have to be careful to not hold elections after the European elections. We see that France's political situation has weakened its voice abroad. Remember that you who are online can ask questions. You know that those who are in Paris can discuss directly with the speakers, but you can ask questions online as well. I received them and I will raise the questions for Pascal Boniface. We saw Europe has a lot of weaknesses. We see there are other groups emerging, but there are things that are doing well. Well, here we could remember of COP21, the Paris Agreement, which was a success, maybe a relative success from the long-term point of view, but it was a success. Let me be a bit of a patriot here. It was a French success, which is quite rare. On the 15th of December 2015, 193 countries signed the same agreement. That was an extraordinary work by French diplomacy to include large countries, including small countries. For Saudi Arabia, Haiti, China, and the U.S. signed the same text concerning climate was a success. We speak of the international community to speak of its failures. But I think that, for once, the international community came together and acted. Unfortunately, the agreement signed was not sufficiently binding, and then it was renounced by the President of the United States. But at least everyone came to an agreement on the diagnosis. There is climate change, and that we need to work on that. There is no B plan, there's no B planet. So then, what still is a problem is how do we finance all of this? The $100 billion that we need to find a year so that the poorest countries, the people in the South, the South says to us, you in the North, you have polluted for years and years. This is why the Sahara is so dry, etc. And now, because of this alarm you have for the climate change, all of a sudden you want us to be penalized. So it's important that we come to an agreement that the southern countries not think that the northern countries are putting a brake on their development because of climate change. Now, obviously, people who get rich consume more. So how can we ensure that a larger population with more people with more money consume more, how we can all continue to live on the planet? The Paris Agreement is a kind of common foundation. It's not a community, but there are a number of common things here. Yes, Europe is quite virtuous as regards the climate change. It has a more advanced carbon transition program than the US or China. It's a strength, but it's a weakness as well. Because when you respect the rules, you import products from countries that don't respect the rules. So you need to be able to protect yourself against that as well. And it would be crazy if we have standards for the production of agricultural products, textiles, and that are respective of the environment. And then we import from China cheaper products which have not respected the environment. So we must act to protect our industry and our economic system. We spoke of the export and the things we send to developing countries, whether in Africa or Latin America. And we spoke about the fact that there were customs barriers. And so here, do we need to reestablish customs barriers in negotiations? You know that France does not have a commercial policy. Germany does not have a commercial policy. Germany is not going to be desirous to cut off China because Germany has already lost its major energy supplier, Russia. It doesn't want to cut off trade with China, its major customer. When we talk about production and the environment, Germany, for political and ideological reasons, it has renounced nuclear energy in favor of coal, which from the environmental point of view can be considered not that interesting. And up to now, France and Germany have always been able to come to an agreement. I'll give in on this, you give in on that, Kohl, Mitterrand, Giscard, Schmidt, etc. We no longer have that alchemy between the German president and the French president. And now the Germans are saying, well, the French are nice, but they're always in a deficit situation. We have our interests, and so we're going to do what we want. Now, if we talk of the European crisis or the European weakness, what would you say it is? Well, I would say that the main reason, and this is a historical crisis, you have countries which have an existential fear of Russia. If the Russians are capable of, if they're not able to go to Kiev, they're not going to be able to go Warsaw, or Berlin. But many people feel that they can only be protected from Russia if there are certain other countries can help them. Most of the Eastern European countries have no real opinion on the Middle East. They vote like the U.S. And you know that it's clear we cannot ask a country to protect you militarily and then not follow them on the major diplomatic issues, because otherwise they could say, well, look, you defend yourself. It's an existential fear that these countries have of Russia. When we speak of Trump, well, we can hope that people vote in numbers and for the right candidate. What is the impact on what is the impact? I'm not going to say it's the same thing. There are differences in terms of defense, integrity, correctness, politeness, humanity. I think that most people would prefer spending the evening with Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, unless you want to play golf. But from the program point of view, when Biden was elected, people were dreaming that everything was going to be okay and that we were going to live a peaceful pact. If Kamala Harris is elected, she will be elected president of the United States. And from the trade point of view, she will have protectionist policies to protect America. If you look at Trump, Trump has an investment uh, the competitiveness of the European Union vis-à-vis the US has dropped by 20%. So these are questions of strategy, and the personality of the person who will be elected will not change anything. Trump says that he's going to put an end to NATO. That's not true. If NATO exists, it's for the US, not for us. So he'll calm things down. I think that Kamala Harris will play the violin to Europe, and Trump will play the bass. So Trump says that in 24 hours he can put an end to the war, whereas Kamala Harris will take a year. Well, it's true that the Americans are tired of sending aid to the Ukraine. The last aid package to Ukraine was immense. Everyone knows that Ukraine will not recover the territory it has lost since the beginning of the war. And so we've reacted emotionally to a war for strategic reasons. So if Trump is elected, there will be a brutal stop to American aid to Ukraine. And what have we done? We have followed the U.S. If we defend Ukraine, if we wanted to defend Ukraine because of the war crimes committed by Putin. If Kamala Harris is elected, it will obviously come to an end. The war will come to an end because in the feed, Putin has the nuclear weapon. So we will not go and try to tempt Moscow. We will not send Western soldiers to the Ukraine either. The Russians have 4 times as many soldiers as Ukraine. I'm coming back to what I've tried to determine the weaknesses. Let's come back to the ecological transition. There's a saying in geopolitics that say the United States innovates, China copies, and Europe regulates. You can tell me whether this is true or not. But that means we are strong from the regulatory point of view. So perhaps we have a strong hand for influencing things from the regulatory point of view. Yes, if you look at the digital standards, we have a market of 450 million consumers, inhabitants in the European Union. We are the richest market in the world. We have a big middle class with a strong buying power. So if we come to an agreement, if we can say, okay, we don't agree on this, and so you can't export this to us. I look at, the that said that the Europeans were herbivores and the Americans carnivores. And so this means that we have interests that we have to defend. And it's not a dirty word to say we're going to defend our interests because everybody else does it. So we can say, yes, you have to respect this standard. You have to pay this tax. When the British left the European Union, we made them respect us, and we have to do this with China and the U.S. And this is where the European strategic weakness can play. That Germany says, well, I have a diplomacy that means that I don't want to get on the bad side of the Chinese. And then Eastern Europe says, we need the American nuclear umbrella, so they don't want to be difficult with the U.S. But, the BNP bank had, in fact, a fine of 10 million euros because they traded with Sudan despite the U.S. law. And we have to be strong and united. Well, what about the standards? The standards that we are implementing, which impose on the imposing two balance sheets on the big companies, one that is financial and one which is not financial, not an accounting balance. You know that there are companies which have seen holes in their energy bills, etc. So what this shows is that there is an awareness that it's useful to do things. It's useful to do things together and to try to defend our interests, just like the Americans defend their interests, etc. They all have an industrial policy. It would be abnormal that Europe not have a policy to defend itself. But that means we have to work 27 different countries, 27 different languages. The different languages we're used to, I think that artificial intelligence will enable this to no longer be a problem in a few years' time. But what's important is our different history. Our different history gives us a different geopolitical DNA. When you're Polish, you don't have the same vision of Moscow as the French. The free trade agreements have highlighted the carbon tax. It depends on what taxation you have. If you look at the first formula, which was a free trade agreement, but you can add to the free trade agreements environmental standards. It depends on whether this is acceptable from the point of view of the public opinion. For the textile industry, what is the major challenge in your opinion? What is the major challenge Europe has to take up here? If we were, I think that we need to remember that the sector has qualifications, skills, expertise, know-how, businesses, and prestige. You have what's called soft power, which is extremely important. We need to preserve this. We cannot be dependent on other countries, other nations. If I understand you, we need to observe our adversaries while being part of the same international community, while having regular contacts and links with them. And by observing them, we can adopt their methods. Yes, well, we have to have access to markets, materials that we don't have. The weak point of Europe is that for a long time it protected the consumer and not enough the manufacturer. So, there are rules of non-competition, etc. We must protect our industries. We must protect our agriculture, have a more offensive policy to protect them through regulations. But today, it's not just the consumer that needs to be protected. We must protect our industries as compared to those of the other countries. So it's not a question of preparing oneself. Today, we have to act. And I hope that the new commission will start working very quickly and efficiently because, you have a commissioner from each country. The fact that some countries have 3 more commissioners than France, well, is linked to a political will. But I think that Mrs. von der Leyen, who had made a lot of promises with regards to a geopolitical Europe when she arrived in power 5, 6 years ago, well, I think that this is not really the case. Without the European relaunching program after COVID, we see the difference with the UK. I think that the UK now understands the advantage of being part of the European Union. And in fact, they see the difference. And so you don't necessarily fear another Brexit, another exit from another country. The 2 countries that were whispering this type of discourse were France and the Netherlands. But I think that today, in light of what happened to the UK, they have stopped hitting on Europe because they now understand all of the advantages of belonging to the European Union. Another question, perhaps? The WTO, the UN, are they still useful for certain things? Yes, you know, the WTO is blocked by the US veto. The UN is blocked by a number of vetoes. So the question we need to ask is, would the world be better off if the WTO and the UN did not exist? That is to say, these places which allow the world to negotiate. When we look at the crises today, Syria, Ukraine, Middle East, and so if we look at what has happened since 1990, but the UN is not just that. There's the World Health issues, the High Commission for Refugees, etc. All of these negotiations and meetings that take place and which prevent the world from being more dangerous than it is today. Two questions left. You know, I spoke of the geopolitical adage whereby the US innovates, China copies, and Europe regulates. So you know that the European Union also innovates. You know that we have companies that compete with the GAFAs, the Googles, Apples, etc. So you know that Sparta had to fight the war against Athens, you know. So will the US fight with China? It's hard to say. Then there's the problems that existed after World War II, you know. So I think that if we look at the nature of relations between Beijing and Washington, this is probably the key to the future of the planet. The war in the Ukraine, the war in the Middle East, they're important, but they're not as important as what is taking place between China and the US. You know, the Chinese can say, we want to have access to the American market for Chinese products, and vice versa. The big difference is, in fact, the Soviet Union. You know, there were $2 billion in dollars in trade between Russia and the US. If you look at the trade between China and Russia now, China has never been a democracy. When China joined the WTO, they represented 10% of trade with the US. And the 11th of September did not change anything in the world, didn't change the US's position. What really changed the world was when China entered the WTO. And when China changes, the world changes. I think that Kamala Harris will continue Joe Biden's policy to contain China's advance in technology. I think that Trump, well, you know, Elon Musk, who's a big supporter of Trump, has a major plant being built in China for Tesla. So, you know, China wants to weaken the US, and so they prefer having someone like Trump who's not rational rather than someone more rational than Kamala Harris. You know that the question of China is common to Republicans and Democrats. I have a last question, which has nothing to do with this, but I must say, I would like to ask you the question. The new formula for the Europe Cup, the Champions League, what does it mean for you?
So in fact, this will take away the value of the League Number One, because so people will watch this. So it's a kind of exfiltration of football in Europe. So, okay, we're laughing about this, but football is a way of understanding international challenges as well. Yes, sport is a very important international factor. So everybody is involved in sport. So the rapprochement between China and the US is basically done on the ping pong table, on the table tennis table. So thank you very much, Pascal, for this exchange.
On a une petite question.
So we have a question that I'm going to put to Pascal Boniface, and for those of you who are listening remotely. So, and you can put your hand up. What is the main challenge for Europe in terms of the US and China? Is it answer A? So it depends on them for raw materials, B, competition for textile innovation, or too much restrictive regulation. Who says A? Okay, we've got some people who think A. What do you? Oh no, you don't say A, Pascal. B. So textile innovations. A couple of hands there. Is it the too restrictive regulations? So Pascal, you're saying that. So because if these regulations are binding for us, but they're not for our competitors, there has to be a reason for this. And very often we've seen in the past, some of these regulations are very damaging to us, but they leave the door wide open to the competition. So that was your answer. It's very interesting. So now we can see in the chat that this dependence in terms of raw materials, this makes Europe very vulnerable. Well, we always have access to raw materials if we can pay, but so we had almost a monopoly in terms of Russian gas, but it was cut off and we're able to bounce back. So in terms of textiles, I don't think that we're really dependent on one provider. So if you have a whole host of different suppliers of raw materials, then you don't become dependent. Thank you very much, Pascal Boniface. So now we're going to go to a new session, still talking about Europe, basically the European Union going up to 2015. So they're going to come on stage. We've got Modadi, who's the General Director of Refashion, Emmanuelle, Maire, Head of Unit EVB, Circular Economy at the European Commission, Stéphanie, the Head of Project at EPR, Textiles France and Europe Decathlon. And so we also have a moderator.
Mesdames, asseyez-vous.
So please sit down, ladies. So there's no seating plan. You can sit where you want. So I have a question. So that comes just after the other. This is in the interactive thumbnail, so you now know how this works. The question is the following. What are the draft laws that will be in place from January 2025? Is it European regulations and the passport on digital products? Is it B, the enlarging of the EPR to the whole of Europe and the obligation for member countries to carry out collection? So you can put your hand up. Is it A? So we've got some A's. Is it B? So Maud is voting with two hands. So, or is it C? Well done to everybody. The right answer is A, B, and C. So Laura, I'm going to hand over to you, and I'll come back about a quarter of an hour later with some questions, I'm sure, because continue to ask your questions. Thank you. So we're coming to the end of the day, and there are lots of different challenges. It's a very busy day in terms of the textile sector. The objective is quite heavy. It's to try and find some solutions and see if we can find those together, see what Europe can do, because all the different challenges that we've looked at this morning, these are challenges which have a French dimension, but can't necessarily be found by France alone. So to talk about all these different challenges, we've got Maud Hardy, Emmanuelle, Maire, Stéphanie Bailly. The European Union is at a pivotal stage. We said this in the previous session, lots of different legislations coming out, and a lot of this will have an impact on the textile sector. Six different European laws which are currently being discussed, and they will have an impact on the textile sector in some way. So perhaps before we go into the details, perhaps we can, and perhaps not everybody knows all these of what, not everybody knows what the European Union is. So perhaps you can tell us about this. What is the European Commission? What is its role in terms of ecological transition? In a couple of words, and keep it very simple. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. The European Commission is one of the main institutions, the main bodies of the European Union. And the president is Ursula von der Leyen. And our role is to come up with a certain vision, to propose draft laws for the long term. And those will then be adopted by the European Parliament and the 27 member states, so that together we can create the same rules all across the board for the 450 million Europeans, and so that together we're able to defend our history, our expertise, and also to promote international actions. So there are other roles as well, for example, negotiating international agreements, executing the European budget, and also checking up on European members who don't apply European laws, and we can take them to the Court of Justice. So we also have a role of being a policeman in a certain sense, to make sure that everybody applies the same laws. So this is, so we're a source of proposals. We came up with the strategy for the circular economy. That's just one example, but we also come up with texts on eco-design for long-lasting products. So the idea really is to have a European project for everybody, a common European project, and which goes beyond the national borders. So it's interesting, you talked about these different laws. Perhaps we'll go back to those in a moment, the different European laws that will have an impact on the sector. From the upstream, from the downstream, the eco-design of products, so Directive 4 on waste. We also have a new European mandate that has just taken place because we had elections in June. So perhaps in a couple of words, you can tell us about the vision of Europe and what is the vision of the European Commission for the textile sector, because textiles have been identified as being a priority sector when it comes to ecological transition in the European Union. What is the vision of the European Commission, and where are we at with these different laws? What can we expect from this new mandate of the European Union? So first of all, I'd like to talk about the political context that we are in, because Europeans had the possibility to elect the European Parliament in June, and on that particular basis, they also chose Ursula von der Leyen, who's presented her objectives for the next 5 years. And the main priority is prosperity of Europeans and also the support for European industry. We also know that there was a report that came out by Mario Draghi, the fact that we should use the internal market in Europe in order to reach our climate objectives, in order to reach this circular economy. So these questions will always be on the agenda, but we're in a very decisive phase at the moment, because each European commissioner will have to go through an interview and will have to get the feelings or the impressions of the European Parliament, whether it's the commissioner for the environment or for the circular economy and nature, Cyrille, who's a Swede. From 6:30 to 9:30 in the evening, she will have the opportunity to present her priorities as the new commissioner. So all the new commissioners, including Mr. Séjourné for prosperity, for competition, Teresa Rivera, who's in charge of fair transition. So the next coming weeks, they will have to go through this test, this interview, and on that basis, the heads of state and government of the 27 countries will decide on the composition of the next commission, and that will decide the stability for the next 5 years in order to move forward. So we will be moving forward on the basis of a strategy for the circular economy, and so which is about the design of products. They have to be recyclable, long-lasting, reusable, and so whether they're made of recycled materials, free of any dangerous substances, but also it concerns actions for the consumer to fight against greenwashing, and also to use secondary materials in the economy and to avoid exports outside the European Union. We all know what the challenges are in terms of exports, so when we export plastics, electrical goods and clothing. So we want to have a vision, a holistic vision. So there are 16 different laws, and those 16 different laws concern the strategy for the circular economy. So, in summary, what are the key measures of these laws? So first of all, the eco-design of products so they remain long-lasting, durable. So Europeans have to agree so they can have a framework to define what the products are that can be launched on the European market based on environmental criteria. So one of the challenges there is to roll this out for the textile sector or for other sectors as well, and that will be extremely important because it can be a vector of competition for our industries, and then for the industries of other countries as well, if they abide by these rules in order to have access to the European market. So this will mean a process for stopping those exports towards those countries, because once again, we have a legal framework for that. We will probably receive requests. So we are able to treat your waste, so we're asking you to export them to them, but then we have to check what the conditions would be for that. So in terms of greenwashing, saying that your green products, this is all well and good for nature, and so and this digital passport, that will be stopped. So lots of different measures then. Okay, well, we can't go into all of them, but perhaps a question, Stéphanie. The brands like Decathlon, how do they anticipate these changes across all the value chain, whether this is about production, handling things, end of life, traceability, responsibility of the brands? So how can a brand like Decathlon, how can they anticipate these changes? What does it mean for them? How can they prepare for this new European legislation that is coming up? So there's French legislation as well, the European legislation. So what does it mean for a brand, an international brand like Decathlon? Well, first and foremost, we support this because we think that it's extremely important. And we follow this. We participate in the consultations with our industrial and textile expertise, like everybody here in the room. So I would encourage you to get involved. And also we have a vision, a view of what's going to come up. So because of that, that allows us to carry out experiments internally and to go and see concretely what it actually means, what it applies for the sector. And of course, there is a sort of exploration, which is very important as well, in order to see into the future. And so this is the first batch of legislation, and we hope that the European Union will become agile. We know that sometimes there are some very good ideas that sometimes are turned into innovations, and the idea is that we want a certain agility to reduce our impact on the environment. So we participate, we anticipate, and we also explore. Okay, Refashion. We have a quite specific role to play in terms of this European scenario. For the moment, it's the only eco-organization for the CHL sector. Others are emerging in Spain and Belgium and elsewhere. But so we have a particular status, so we can do quite a lot of experiments. So in terms of what's been said this morning and what we're saying now, Refashion can perhaps share some leads for the future, talk about the future of the textile sector. So yes, we're very lucky for 15 years. So we're an eco-organization that deals with the CHF. So we have a couple of new ones coming out across the 27 member states. And we've worked a lot with the teams at the European Commission. And we came up with a list of 10 proposals, which we feel are the proposals which are the most important in order to build this textile sector for the CHF sector, the objective being that it is circular and sustainable. So we're going to present these very quickly. These will be put into a document that will be published very shortly. And we have exchanges on them with the new teams that will soon be in place. And we can summarize these basically in 3 axes. So how can we build, first of all, this European harmonized sector, which is realistic and also ambitious, but being ambitious, but nevertheless realistic. So that's the first priority. So several objectives which are part of this first axis. The second axis, which is key, is to build together a recycling industry in Europe. You said this, there's a lots of possibilities for capturing feedstock. And so the question is, how can we build together this recycling industry in Europe, which will allow us to regenerate materials? And the third axis is focused on the 450 million consumers that we are. How can we inform people so that they make the right choices? So what kind of information do we give them so that they can have access and think about the environmental impact of the product? So those are the 3 axes. I'm not going to go through the different proposals. We'll have the opportunity to talk about these in a couple of days. So, Stéphanie, a question about harmonization. As a brand, is it important to have harmonization at European level? I imagine it is, and why? So how can we move forward on this? Well, first of all, why do we need harmonization? It's important for us because, and let me give you a very concrete example, the PAC. So we had a rule which was quite general that emerged from that. And also a bit of creativity as well from the member states on regulations. And that creative touch led 27 different regulations. For companies, it was very difficult to apply these and to be effective in terms of avoiding waste. And they weren't able to have access to sources which would inform them about treating waste. And we can see that efficiency in the different countries is not the same. So harmonization is important for that reason, so that you have rules which are accessible for the large companies like we are, so we can do a test on eco-modulation. If we can do 1 rather than 27 tests, of course, this is much easier. So there's that aspect, and then there's the regulation and contributions as well. So the declarations have to be facilitated by certain systems. So this is part of the harmonization process. And we've said this before, connection between the different laws is very important, so that action which is taken somewhere can be useful for the others, for the other countries. So it's complementary and it's meaningful for us as a company. So we have to have meaningful laws, because these laws give us a certain vision of things. And this is what will allow us to move forward very gradually and change our model. So perhaps you can react to that, Emmanuelle. So how can these different tools for supporting the sector, how can they can accompany the large brands, the small brands? How can we create a playing field where all the brands are kind of equal. There's not too much administration. How is the European Commission reflecting on this issue of harmonization? Well, the fact that we have, in terms of the green deal, so we have measures on sustainable goods, and this is very good because we didn't have a strategy before at European level. So we've put the strategy on the table, we've mobilized the European Parliament, the 27 states, and we've managed to have this vision, this common vision, which is based on consultations upstream with the Europeans, non-governmental organizations, and various other players. So this was already a key initiative. It allowed us to push the priority of the competitiveness of the textile sector, push it towards innovation, research, and next year we will have an alliance, a private-public alliance on innovation in terms of the textiles and the circular economy and recycling. We also have moved towards regulations rather than having directives, because very often Europe was setting the main objectives, and then those objectives were kind of rolled out to the 27 states and broken down in specific measures. And it added an extra layer of administration. And many people have said to us, no, we have to stop this idea of the directive and have greater harmonization of rules. So also at decision-making level. In Brussels, of course, there's a lot of work there. It's not easy to look at all the details, but so we need to mobilize the different sectors around the challenges, otherwise we would make mistakes. And one of the challenges is to find the right balance between common rules for everybody, which are harmonized, but without impacting competitiveness of the sector. And above all the reporting standards that there might be in terms of companies. So we have more than 200,000 textile companies in Europe, and they employ about 1.3 million people. So we have to have the right regulations. And so consultation of all Europeans is absolutely key. I just want to go back to something that was said, talking about the new mandate and the idea of sovereignty and competitiveness. So we talk a lot about this in textiles, but it's also important for lots of other sectors. How do we create a market, European market, especially for recycled materials? We've talked a lot about this, managing waste at the end of life. This is the future, and some industrial players are ready to invest in this in Europe, but we have a real problem when it comes to demand for recycled materials. So perhaps at the level of the European Commission, is this a subject that you've already taken up? And what are the financial mechanisms that we can implement in order to create this market for a demand for recycled materials? Because this applies to all sectors. How can we develop this market for recycled materials and avoid exporting our waste abroad so that it's handled abroad? Okay, well, this is a major challenge for the next 5 years, because in terms of the political directives and the program for van der Leyen, so in terms of competitiveness, there's this need to have what she calls an act concerning the circular economy, which is focused on a better functioning of the waste market within the European Union, because transporting waste within the European Union, of course, this is not correct. And how can we push the demand for secondary materials? So this will be a huge project, lots of consultations with all the different sectors, just to give you an idea of some of the measures we can, through regulation, we can ask that each product contain a certain amount of recycled material, and this will allow us to get a foot in the industrial market for recycling, because with the traditional sectors, so we started with the plastic bottles, we said 25% of bottles have to be of a recycled material, so that gave us some opportunities, and then we have to look at packaging for textiles. That would be one measure. It's not currently on the table, but it's an example of a concrete measure. And then there's the whole issue of economic tools, because we've got the secondary material, which is in competition with the primary material. And in the short term, we can use petrol for synthetic fibers, but it doesn't allow us to reach our climate objectives or to become resilient and use what we already have in terms of the European Union. So what can be the tools, the economic tools that could help us to make that transition? All ideas, of course, are welcome, and all sectors are welcome as well. This is the very heart of the new political challenges. To continue, what is the role and what can the EPR do in terms of creating a European industry for recycling? And what can it do, what can't it do? After 12 years of experience, what is your vision of the limits of the EPR? And what can it do to support this transition? Very good question. So we've been working on this for about 15 years. We've got a few ideas. We think that the EPR is a good kind of support tool for all the different players on the sector. The brands, for example, they're aware of their responsibility, this enlarged responsibility, so we can have a kind of fairness, equilibrium for all the retailers. They will all contribute in the same spirit. And also there's a key role in terms of accompanying the downstream actors, like the collectors, a key role to play in terms of sensitization, the right sorting gestures. So this is the first gesture which is on the path of achieving this circular economy. So in France, we are the specialists in this. So we have a key role to play in terms of accompanying this collective trajectory. But there are also some limits. The EPR can't do everything. So it's not the alpha and omega that will save the world. We would like that to be the case, but it isn't. So we have to be accompanied in this project with ambitious regulation at European level, because otherwise, and we have to be accompanied as well. So by European regulation, we talked about that this morning. There are geopolitical issues at stake. These are quite major, and those will impact the brands, the players in terms of competitiveness, but also the downstream players. So we're in a crisis, structural crisis period, which is being played out internationally, and this has very local impacts. So each of the local authorities will have to act to crisis situations, but all this is part of an international approach, and the ERP can't do anything unless it's supported by European regulations which will protect the European territory. So a last question, perhaps, on the obstacles that have been identified by Decathlon. How can we remain competitive as a brand in terms of this tough composition? What do you need from the public authorities so that you can continue to exist and function as a brand? So we talked about this with Pascal Boniface. How can we make sure that Europe remains relevant, and how can we make sure that the brands remain competitive, and how can they navigate through this new scenario? Great question. Because there are several issues there. So let me take the example of the T-shirt that I'm wearing. So we talked about competitiveness. How can you be ahead of the curve?
So we've been able to make the T-shirt in an industrial way, 2024, 2025. It replaces, in fact, our classic T-shirt, same price, with 35% of recycled waste products. Technically and industrially speaking, we know how to do this. Now, we have, let me say this, we can be very happy and proud. We have a European fiber that's used. So this fiber that we use is from Europe, and we knew that we had the necessary value chain to do this. But what's great is that tomorrow, this whole approach, each emitter in the market, what he puts in the hands of the consumer, products, which are incorporating waste. Well, the waste has a price, a cost, and it's going to be at the center of the eco-organisms and eco-bodies because we need that money be there. You know that today there is a crisis. Now, can in fact the emitter, the person who puts this on the market, can they capitalize on the expertise and skills acquired in Europe by a number of actors present here? We need to capitalize on this. Perhaps there's a transformation in the market, which means that each and every one of us will have a different role to play. And what I said this morning was that we're in a crisis. We need a safety net because we might find ourselves in a situation where things are not going to work as well. But what's really important is we need to go to the top. And this is why we need to have the financing of the second-hand sector, but also the recycled waste material. It has a price. Today Decathlon is bearing the cost because we don't want the recyclers to have this. But we would like this to become the standard and that there be in a competitiveness that is equal, the same between the recycled and the virgin material, if you like. So I look at Éloi. Do I have any questions? Yes, there's a question. First of all, this allows me to pay tribute to the work done by the Refashion team, because sometimes when you ask questions, the answer is integrated in the question. So thank you for the work that's been done here. Now, questions which have not been answered by the group here. What is the eco organization in Belgium? Well, the market is in fact organizing itself. You have your answer. Will there be a law against fast fashion in Europe? I think that the circular economy strategy is there, and I think that fast fashion is out of fashion. So our objective has been to get out of that fast fashion logic and to, in fact, try to push the approach that is, in fact, trying to get rid of these low-price products coming from everywhere. You know that as far as solutions are concerned, 80% of textiles in Europe are neither recycled or secondhand reuse. They end up incinerated. So we want to have the idea that fast fashion is out of fashion, whether it's at the level of design, greenwashing, recycling, etc. We want to get out of that logic. I think it's extremely important to have an organization like Refashion, which is trying to push everyone towards this. All of us are tempted by the idea of having a beautiful piece of clothing, something new. But at the same time, we know we have to reduce our impact. I think the transition is underway. But I think it calls for a great deal of mobilization at all levels. We spoke of the schools this morning. I think the schools are a key player. How can we be a counterweight to TikTok for the acceleration of the propagation of our message? And I think that the Digital Act is in the process of implementing a certain legislation, is recognizing what this type of platform, like be it Chinese or other, has to respect regulations. And I think that things have started to move, but it's got to go far beyond our own circle. We have to continue to promote the circular economy and an end to throwaway fashion. Point of clarification and a question mark. The clarification, what is the REP pack? So in fact, this is the extended producer responsibility packaging, the REP pack. How can the European Union organize itself to have a second-hand market? How do we abolish the loopholes in the European regulation whereby you have, this waste which is going to go into small states. And we have to do away with the barriers to this recycling. We have to do away with the recycling barriers that can exist. All right. I'd like to add something. Given that we have the luck or maybe the difficulty of being the only organization in this sector, we're trying to create a forum to bring together all of the new small textile eco institutions to anticipate on this need for harmonization, anticipate on all the questions that we need to anticipate on so that this REP, in fact, this extended producer responsibility be present in other countries, that we find some kind of simplification of the REP, this extended producer responsibility, with simple rules for calculations, to have the same eco conditions, to have harmonized situations when we look at the calculation of the bonuses and penalties. So how can we work on the circulation of these collected waste products? How do we better sort them? How can we prepare this material for recycling, which will open up new markets? So this forum was created a year ago, and I think that the members will grow as new eco bodies are created. I think that this is essential because in Brussels, we've seen that all of the obligations for collection, which will be the standard in January 2025, we had a lot of European member states who said, how do we create the conditions for transforming, processing this mass of textiles? France has served as a reference point because of its experience, and there's been quite an evolution here. So this way, so as to avoid the pitfalls and correct things so that other European states, I repeat, avoid the pitfalls. So the European Council is trying to harmonize the regulatory framework regarding waste and concerning the extended responsibility of the producers. So we want to try to have the direct support of the ECHO institutions. And if we have that, this will give us a great deal of advance in terms of applying this. In conclusion, I think that a cooperation with the harmonization authorities are essential. We need the European Union to work with the sector, and we have to ensure that the regulation just not be a question of constraints, but that there be a veritable vision underlying these regulations. And perhaps one last word here, perhaps a couple words or a sentence with regards to your vision of the sector in 2050. I'd like to start. I think that there's something we haven't necessarily mentioned, and that is the objective. What are we targeting? Is it that in 2050 we want to have a zero waste sector, the textile sector, zero waste in 2050? If so, then we need to have a major project with milestones, industrial milestones, and the European Commission is going to have to set some very clear targets. And and it's also important that we review the project like every 3 years. I would say 2050, a zero waste textile sector with a much reduced impact, but still with the pleasure of wearing clothes which are made for sports practice, of course, for identifying oneself as well, and for the pleasure of being what we are. In France, the fashion culture will be clean and have a low impact. Thank you. For me, what's important is to to preserve the textile know-how and tradition, having it always evolve, all of the textile economic sector, whether it be in France, Italy, Portugal, everywhere in Europe, that we have leaders of a responsible sector. And we have a vision for the circular strategy, which continues to be important for 2030. But for 2050, obviously, we want to be climate neutral. This is our challenge as set out in European law. This can only be done if we're able to bring on board other countries. So there's also the major global challenge that has to be taken into account. I would add that if we look at the red thread today, cooperation, I think that we will achieve this the more we cooperate together. I think that is a major challenge. We need to bring all of the players at the European level around the table to really be able to reduce the impact, the environmental impact of our sector, and we all need to look up together. Thank you very much. Laura, thank you, ladies.
Merci beaucoup, mesdames. Oui, mais voilà, il y a beaucoup de
Thank
questions
you
qui arrivent.
very
C'est
much.
fini.
I know that
On n'a plus
we
le
have
temps,
a lot
mais
of
tout sera
questions,
traité,
but
tout
we
sera
don't
recyclé,
have
bien
the
sûr.
time now,
Merci
but
beaucoup
everything
pour
will be
tous vos livres.
processed and
À la
recycled
question,
here.
est-ce qu'il y
Now,
aura un replay? Oui, il y
the
aura un replay.
question, will there be
Grâce
a
à l'excellent
replay?
boulot de
Yes,
l'équipe Refashion et de l'équipe
thanks to
qui est en
the
régie. Là, changez
work
rien,
of
les gars, vous êtes fabuleux.
Refashion and the team
Est-ce que toutes les
in
ressources que vous avez
the
pu voir
studio.
sur les écrans,
I
vous
think that
pourrez les
on the
retrouver
screens,
sur le site de Refashion
you've
également.
seen
Vous
that you
retrouverez tout,
can find
y
all of
compris
this on
les 10
the
points
Refashion
exposés
site
ou digérés
so that
par Maud tout à l'heure.
you will have
On
all of
va
the
revenir en France après ce grand
presentations.
voyage. On
We're
revient
coming
avec une
back to
escale en France autour
France
de la présentation de
now
la nouvelle campagne Refashion.
regarding
Rien ne
the
se jette.
new
Et
Refashion
vont me
campaign.
rejoindre sur scène Sandra
Nothing
Baldini,
is
directrice
thrown
consommation de
away.
Refashion, et Pierre
So
Lafont,
we have, in
Global Business
fact,
Leader chez McCann
Sandra
Miller.
Baldini, the Consumption Director at Refashion, and Pierre Lafont, Global Business Leader and Head of New Business at McCann.
Tu te mets où? Mets-toi là.
Alors, Sandra, Pierre, je vous présente la salle.
Sandra, Pierre,
Vous avez une télécommande qui est ici.
you have a remote control here because you have something you'd like to present to us? Yes, as we said this morning, and as has been repeated throughout the day, we will talk about the consumer's sorting gesture, who's going to deposit this at a collection point. And this is what is going to commit the entire sector to the circular economy. And in this way, we can have resources for the sector. So what are we going to do in France with regards to the national situation? We've done a lot of studies, as we said this morning. Inès said so as well, about things that need to be done and not what should be done. So there is a lack of knowledge among consumers about what they can actually bring to a collection bin, socks with holes in them, underclothing, etc., that have holes in them. You have French people who say, we don't know what we can actually bring here. We saw that this lack of knowledge exists in other sectors as well. So our objective is to educate the French, and here I'll give the floor to Pierre, who will explain the principle that we are going to use on the subject of education and pedagogy by telling them that nothing is thrown away. And this is so as to orient them and guide them towards this collection. So Pierre, you're going to tell us who we are working with on the subject. Maybe a word about the site. Now, it's difficult to talk to 60 million French people. It's difficult and costly. So we've identified the French to whom we're going to talk so as to have the greatest impact with this first national campaign. The French have said they'd like to take part in something, but they want to take part in a kind of subject. And then we try to look at the spearhead, the bridgehead for this. We looked at typical profiles, and we saw that you have a big sorter who sorts through his clothes closet, but never takes them to a bin. And this person is the one we are targeting. So you have Adrien, you have others like him that we are going to target in this first campaign that will start in 2 days. And you know that Adrien, this person never goes to the bins. So how did we determine what could activate Adrien to take these clothes to his, in fact, bin? So we're looking at young people, 18 to 34. They're looking in their closets. They need room. And when they sort, they either you put the clothes directly in the garbage can, or they put them neatly in a bag and then end up in the trash anyway. So we decided to tell them that Refashion collect awards. And what's important is that we want to make this desirable. You know, sorting through one's clothes is a bit complicated, not fun. And so what we've done here is look at this behavior, which is virtuous for the environment. We want it to be fun, interesting. You know, the subject is a complex one, so you need to activate them by saying nothing it goes to the garbage, everything can be collected. So, you know, this so as to ensure that people, first of all, understand that everything is collected. Now, the way in which we're going to do this is we're going to do a challenge on Instagram. It's called Nothing Goes to the Garbage, Everything is Collected or Collectible. So we're going to inform the internauts on how to have them collected. So here you have you know, we're working like with the Oscars or the French Caesars in the movie industry with different categories, you know, best star, best female actress, best male, etc. But here we have categories. So in the young category, you have the vintage. In shoes, we can talk about the premium shoes in terms of tennis shoes, sports shoes that are worn, in terms of clothes, clothes that have stains, holes, etc. In the underclothing, you know, the less sexy underwear, the sexiest underwear in the world, the trunks, the men's underwear with the greatest number of holes. So this is a less boring way of telling people that everything can be collected and nothing thrown away. So we try to have a kind of fun approach, try to get people to smile on the way we deal with the subject, try to get them interested in the subject, and they can navigate through the different categories. They can win as well. They can take the floor on the social media, and we can explain to them how to collect things. How do you participate? Well, I'm going to photograph the item I'm going to take to the bin. I take a photograph of it, and with the title, Nothing Goes Away, is thrown away, and then we can try to reward them. So we want the behavior to be rather than just virtuous, make it more fun, more relaxed. Also, in this way, we can inform them of where the collection bins are, for example, you know, there'll be little maps explaining where there are bins collecting these clothes. And so this is, in fact, available on Refashion site, the map of all the collection bins. So I think that this is done with a partnership. Yes. You know, the first choice is influence. You know, so today the big influencers have become medias as such, you know, and, you know, they can have people's behavior vis-a-vis the brands change, so they can help make the people change their habits as well. So we're going to launch this with someone who's quite well known, Natou. Natou is a macro influencer. Matou is, going to be heard on the radio. Hi, this is Matou. Do you have shoes, clothes which are in bad condition or that you don't want anymore? Good news. If you take part in the Refashion Awards, nothing is thrown away. Everything is collected until the 21st of November. You have more information on Instagram. This will go on the social media networks on the 7th of November and on the radios on the 9th of November, so that we can reach out to more people. So on the social media networks and radios. You know that we have some 26,000 contact points. So we should be able to get 46% of our target group. They can hear us on Fun Radio Europe 2, Chérie FM, Skyrock, and the social media. Some 84 million contacts would be possible. And Nat2 has some 4 million followers on Instagram, 2 million on TikTok, 5 million on YouTube. So on the 7th of November, the challenge will be launched. You'll be able to see the major principles of the competition of this challenge. You know that we have someone who's dealing with this subject, which is very serious in a lighter way, someone who's worked with Golden Mustache, etc. So I think that this should be extremely interesting for the environmental press as well. So everyone can participate. It's not limited to the young people. Anyone can participate. We want to generate as much volume as possible. Hashtag, nothing is thrown away. Everything is collected. So we're going to end today. How do you end a day like today? We're going to finish with a kind of relaxation, if you like, or as Pierre Lafont would say, with a kind of judo, approach. So I'm going to give the floor to Cyrille de Lasteyrie, who's going to come on stage and occupy the stage.
Elle a beaucoup parlé d'une courbe en U, Isabelle.
Isabelle spoke of a U-shaped curve. Now, I don't know what, that people do not know about. The U-shaped curve has a U shape. For those who are not familiar with it, this is a curve which is often used in business. What it means is that it was good at the start, it got worse, and then it goes back up. At 20, you think life is beautiful, you're going to be rich, you're going to have an Aston Martin. At 40, you're driving with Martine in a Clio. And then all of a sudden, things improve. So it's at 40 years of age that everything takes place. This is where you need to focus. Now, the problem with Engie is that Engie stopped the coal. They had a short curve in a U-shaped curve. And 4 years later, they were able to make it.
Elle a proposé une méthode en 3D. On a eu pas mal de méthodes avec des lettres. Comme je suis littéraire, je me suis vachement axé sur le vocabulaire. So she came up with this
3D method. So I like the language that they use. So digitalized, decarbonized, etc. Refashion, that's 4 R's. And also the 10 R's for the golden rules. Apart from 10, things will get difficult. So it's difficult to remember after 10. Re-education, rename, etc., etc. So what I have taken away with me is the current business mix with the graphs with the different colors, because basically it was like the jacket that Maud was wearing. And so I said I was going to find a name for this. I said it was a rainbow for the end of the world. Is that positive or not? No, it's not very positive. So just to get into the you have to go from A to B. So I said with my business, perhaps I need an acute accent and it needs to go straight up. So we're going to be destroying some jobs, but we'll be creating others. So there's a step in between them, and people will be wondering where they need to go. But anyway, that doesn't matter. So that is creative destruction. There's a second session. It was the overshoot day. Do you know when that was? When was it? In May? No. It was the 1st of August, so that's easy. So this is when the people that go on holiday in August come back, and the ones that go in, the ones that go in July come back, and the ones that leave in August leave for holidays. So there's different perceptions here. Anyway. So the first idea for progress by Hugo, attacking the upstream flows in terms of quality. I think China is a real issue today. I really didn't know much about this until today, but wow, so a very unleashed consumption in terms of China. I don't know whether somebody noted that down. Okay, well, I found this a bit problematic. Anyway, 43% of people don't know where the drop-off stations are. That's so basically they walk past them, but they don't. So they exceed the limits. That's a play on words in French, and they don't notice these drop-off stations. So I've got loads of things that I've noted down. So anyway, I'm here to summarize things and to find some ideas for the future. 28% of people sort for ecological reasons. So firstly, I don't sort myself, but I know that that's not good, but anyway, there are a third of the population do that, but I do it from time to time. Why do I do that? And I said, okay, let me think about this. I do it because there's no more space in the cupboard, because I'm divorced and because I live with my son, who's 20 years old. But basically, my son's cupboard is full of unmatched pairs of shoes. So there I could become part of the recycling category. So why do I sort? Sometimes I said, okay, well, I go to this skip, and if this drop-off point, so what happens after that? And I swear, okay, you're part of this field, but I really don't know what happens afterwards. And I imagined, for example, that there were people out there somewhere who collected these things and said, okay, this is good. Okay, I can put this on myself. And so I'll put it aside for myself. I'll give this to somebody else in Africa or elsewhere. And this I will recycle. So basically, there are lots of things going on once you put it in the drop-off point. So I think there are lots of people who are in this situation who don't know about this. And I really didn't know anything about this once you've given your item of clothing. So that's the first thing. And then we have this word, la crème, cream, the top quality items. I thought it was an abbreviation. So, but it isn't. Is it really the cream of the crop, or is it an abbreviation? So it's the cream of the items, if you like. So I was wondering about this. Okay, you didn't know either. That reassures me. So basically, it's the items that can create value on the second-hand market. So I've also discovered that we can throw things away whether they're in a bad condition. So I do this like many others do as well. I take my items of clothing. If it's still good or nice, I don't throw it away, because you never know, you could wear it again. So, but if it's not nice, so I don't throw it away either. So.
Avec cette question, pourquoi les chaussettes sont trouées, mais surtout pourquoi les caleçons sont trouées?
Why have the socks got holes in, and why have the sneakers got holes in? Do you know? Well, I don't know. Anyway, I don't throw things away very easily. And I remember that I had a very nice coat, which I didn't throw away because it reminded me of my ex. And so it had a sentimental value. And you don't have the same thing with electrical goods, of course. Okay, you didn't give a damn about the microwave. Other people, you can give that away and people will deal with it. But the coat, I kept that. Another reason why I didn't throw the coat away was because as it's a very nice coat, I thought somebody could sell it to make money from it. Okay, that's not good. But then human beings are not good. But they can't make an awful lot of money out of it anyway, so that reassures me. It's not very nice of me to say that. So there are golden rules. Moving on. At some point, we wondered about the word we could use instead of gift, collection. So I thought about lots of different possibilities for this, Dragon Ball. No reason for that. And what we call a bastard. So sometimes there are some times which are more difficult than others, but anyway, sometimes. So have you made your gift? Well, okay, this is something you can do every month anyway, use a new word. So one person was asked if they had an 11th golden rule. So this operation with the holy socks, the socks with holes in, I thought that was a great idea. So my son with 50,000 different pairs of holy sneakers and socks, if you've got teenagers at home, no, perhaps you're too young for that, but basically the future of the planet is in their hands. So God help us. So I asked my son what he was going to do for the planet. He says, okay, I'm gonna create a food truck with shea grains, etc. And he said, okay, these are recyclable products. So it was ecological, but so I can buy myself a Lamborghini. But anyway, that's just a detail. But anyways, he's in charge of our future. So this operation with the holy socks, I know this is going to amuse him. So ecosystems, basically knowledge wanting to do something and be able to do something. So I didn't know what to do with that. And basically, I didn't really know what I wanted or what I knew. So I think that her association is a good thing for all of us. And then the CTO performance 3 R's. So this is one more R than refashion. But we've got performance 3 R's. So it might seem strange, but anyway, I kind of I do this exercise on my brain. There are too many R's in your business, so I think you have to change the letters. So in terms of this vocabulary cocktail, so the textile race, I'm afraid of the textile race, but anyway, the French will pronounce it as textile race. So that's a bit dangerous to say that at the moment. The race doesn't exist. So I saw this on TikTok, so I'm reassured about that. So we could talk about a textile challenge in French to avoid any problems. So I've learned something new. What do you do when a collection point is overflowing? Well, we're going to report this, and so we're going to become, we're going to denounce it. So I don't know whether many people will, grass on the collection point. I've also learned that you shouldn't put wet linen in there because there are some people who do put wet linen in there. So, okay, if it's wet, stick it in the collection box. But I thought that this would kind of dry out in the skip or the collection point, but apparently it doesn't. Or you put it in a dryer. But anyway, that's not very good in terms of the CO2. So no wet linen. I also discovered that when it's damaged, then it's no longer any good to anybody. So you have to put it in a bag. And so I have another problem with that. To save the planet, I have to put my old items in a plastic bag to put them in a skip. So I have a problem with this. So the good, the evil. So why should we put this in a plastic bag when we're asking not to use plastic? So we're talking about these eco gestures, being careful. So you're going to have to really explain that because it's very complicated. plastic bags, I've learned that you can resell those. If you go to Monoprix, for example, it's 10 cents a bag. So
je lui balance 20 sacs, hop, 2 euros. Alors, Monoprix, par contre, c'est pas ouf.
Monoprix, it's not great. So these are labels. I've seen this on the Refashion site. So you shouldn't cut off the labels. You should not cut off the labels because you've got all the information on that. And if you buy from Monoprix, you've got a label of about 40 centimeters long. So when you buy a pair of boxer shorts, you cut this and then you... So you have to decide whether to cut this bit off or not. So it's not very practical. Video on Ghana, the person from Ghana. So I've just understood that they've become quite demanding. They don't want us to sell them all our shit. They want the nice brands now. So this is what he said, basically. I'm exaggerating a bit. So we have to stop sending them all these bad quality goods. So there was one woman who got very angry, but she's got some real solutions to the problem. So we're going back to the cream here, so that's all well and good. So if we buy low cost, we collect low cost, we export low cost, and then we throw it away because it's completely rubbish. And this is where China comes in. So I think we should prohibit Chinese textiles. So, of course, we can't avoid them. And so we export to China. So they're going to say, well, you're exporting to us, but we don't. But then you're asking us to do this. But so Greta Thunberg, do you remember this? In 2017, she wanted a crop top from Shine, and then she took a selfie. But anyway, but China's not the same. But anyway, it amused me. When it's good for the planet in France, this is Edem who said this. So when it's good for the planet in France, we have to think about the equation elsewhere. So that one really bowled me over because I've been listening for 4 years. And so I had this kind of ecological conscience that was rising in me. So I said, OK, now I'm going to sort, I'm going to be ecological. And now this guy says, no. But that's for us. But in Africa, it's something social. So with this ecological fibers, what should I do? And then I've learned that professional wear is not necessarily accounted for.
Ben non, mais c'est vrai. C'est rare qu'on voit un mec qui arrive en disant bah, j'ai perdu 10 millions. Quoi. Là, wow.
So it's rare when you hear somebody say, oh, well, I lost 10 million on this. Well, that's just bad luck. So I did some research on internet. Basically, I realized that if we have somebody working in a net curtain fabric, so she had a leather bag from Andalusia, so she had so basically she had layers of different professional clothing on them. And so if we were going to recycle things, we would only recycle the dungarees. But there's a bit of confusion in terms of all these different layers of administration. So anyway, things do follow on, even though I've lost my place. B2B clothing. So I think there was a bit derogatory, but anyway, it's poetry.
Après, il y a encore un problème de vocabulaire, c'est vous dites
Problem
que
vocabulary. You said that the cost of collection of clothes that are at the end of their life, you're talking like them as if they were elderly people, and then you say you shouldn't throw them away. Well, we don't throw away our seniors, our elderly people. So we have to create these little retirement homes, as it were, for clothing, for your jacquard jumper. So I liked the image of Julia Fort. It's like bailing out water from a bathtub. Then we had the economic discussion, sovereignty, and I said, well, what's the Senate doing about this then? And she said, I've been told not to do anything political. So is it Gérard Larcher who's in the bathtub? That's why it's overflowing. Okay, I'm doing politics, and it's a bit risky. The problem is fast fashion. I have an idea about this. Recommendations. So we should have just one season every 10 years, and we should stop having these fashion shows every quarter. So you get one hemp shirt at 400 euros when you're 18 years old, and you keep it until you're 40 years old. So from 18 to 40, you have one linen shirt. So, and I think that would solve the problem. Isn't it a good idea? I think you're a bit skeptical about all my proposals. So basically, I've had to discover your business in just one day. Okay, Africa. I didn't understand anything there. You have to explain that to me. Africa is suffering. They buy new clothes at a low cost. So basically, there's competition with second-hand goods, diaspora, middle class. So now that we're selling things at a loss. So we'll have to sell things at a loss. So this is the problem with the circular economy. Basically, we go round and round in circles. So if we were to stop all these major exports, that would be a disaster. That's what they said. Okay, and Julien Faure said this as well. But 20 minutes later, they said, okay, they could do without us, they could get by. So this is not a laughing matter, but anyway, there's something that I didn't understand. He said, well, it's the time for Africa now. It's the time to understand Africa, I would say. And I was completely out of it by this. At this point, with my socks with holes in, my holy stickers. So I said, okay, well, is this the link that we have to make? Anyway, my sock is the UN, basically. And Edem d'Almeria. So this was basically an anagram of Maire de l'Ademe. So
bon, en tout cas, j'ai compris qu'il y avait
So I understood that basically there was a bit of anti-Chinese sentiment. I'm joking. So then we had a specialist from a lecturer. So it's great to have lecturers like that. And he finished by saying that China is an economic crisis, and the prices will go down even further. So Julien Faure was talking about prices going up. So there's a problem there. So there's a real problem between China and us. I'm not a medium, but anyway, there is a problem there. So I started thinking about things, trying to find some slogans, even if I wasn't asked to do that. I said, well, before this, and I didn't know certain things, but now people do know. So truth is no longer an obligation, and I think we'll see that this evening. So it's not a moral obligation anymore. So I said, we're going to look at what's happening with global warming and the fact that we shouldn't throw our clothes away. So I had a slogan. So one T-shirt which is thrown away, and a tornado that arrives. So you're not thinking about recycling. Okay, put it in your garage then. It rhymes in French. So I've got people in Valence, so they will laugh at this if they see it. So basically, I saw today that we have to stop. Making people feel guilty, but anyway, we have to act to everything that's going on. I've got lots of other ideas in my head, but I'm not sure that I'm going to give them to you. So I read the white paper. So I tried to download it. So I said, okay, I had to understand what's going on here. The white paper, 10 proposals, which are all very good. Which is good, a comment nevertheless. Proposal 4. So about the retailers, no common register, no single register to fight against. Well, we have some free riders. So this is what I said. Well, there's something in your business. So it's the people who do the most damage that have the best names. So these are people who are quite free riders. But you know, you're stealing my business at the same time. So I'm starting to get vulgar now, so I have to stop. Free rider. So I said, okay, well, we have to work on the name free rider. So shall we call them thieves, for example? Proposal 5, a European fund. Proposal 8, create a European forum for recycling. European textile and textile recycling forum. So once again, I'm working on vocabulary here. So if I can help you, let me know. Bonding. So I suggest we call this street game. So this is basically comes from a Korean game where you kill everybody. So in terms of the retailers, those who don't respect the rules of the game will go home naked. So then I found another idea. So developing harmonized signing, so harmonized signage, so some products could go straight into the bin, they don't go through consumption, direct from the producer to the bin. So because this avoids any moral problems, any technical problems, practical ones. Anyway, you do what you want, it doesn't matter. So a communication operation now to support repairs for shoes and textiles. So I have an idea for an advertisement. So we could have an operating room, 5 different people carrying out the operation. We can't see what they're doing. So they're wearing these white coats. Doctor asks for the instruments, so you can see this happens in Doctor House. So he's repairing basically a pair of dungarees. This is what he's operating on. So explosion of the repairs. So I've been offered a leather bag, which is with no tax applied, so that's good. So to finish with, in conclusion.
Il y a trop de couture. Dans les autres business, on dit qu'il faut un business, une expérience client sans couture.
So we need to have a seamless business. And here I think that we've got too many seams. So we're talking about fashion, are we talking about ecology, are we talking about social issues? There are 3 basic issues. And I know that it's difficult to handle them. Basically, we have to choose one of these. At the moment, I would be pushed towards ecology because things are getting serious there. So I found EOS, explain, oblige and sanction. So let's stop messing around with the consumer. So whether we're talking to individuals, whether we're talking to the Chinese, the EOS, so explain, oblige and sanction.
Et puis, si ça va pas, vous dites que vous venez de ma part.
And if that doesn't work, you can say that you come on my behalf. So, I'd like to thank Refashion. I would invite you to applaud them because they do an awful lot of good work in terms of resistance. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Bon, voilà, c'est le petit pas de côté pour terminer cette
this was our way of ending the day. Something quite different. I noticed some things, Maud. So it's up to you to draw the conclusions of today's work. So I've noted that basically we should move away from being too simplistic and think about the complexity of this sector. Nothing should be thrown away. Hashtag don't throw anything away. Everyone has to be responsible. These are sentences come up time and time again. Be careful with shocking images. The reality is never binary. So cooperation is absolutely key. We saw that all over the place. We need the European Union. What you're doing is cannot be replaced. So that's the work of Refashion. And also explain, oblige and sanction. That's what I'm going to take away with me. I think it's very clear as a conclusion. Maud, how can we finish this kind of a day? So this day full of exchanges. So we can say thank you and well done. So I'd like us all to stand up, all those people who are here and at home as well. Stand up. You've been sitting down since 9 o'clock. Stand up and give yourself a round of applause, a very big round of applause. And you can sit down again. So it's just to stretch your legs a bit. So we can applaud ourselves, and we want to thank the fashion team who's worked tirelessly to organize this day, Eloi, who organized this common theme, and also the technical teams and all the different speakers that we've had, the organizers. So I want to add to what you said. What did I take away from this day? EOS. No, that's not exactly what I was going to say. So I'd like to go back to what we said at the beginning of the day. We talked about Don't Look Up, the film that talks about collective denial, and we said that we were going to adopt a different position. So do look up, so react to the challenges that we're facing. I think that we are all set to do this. You agree? Great. So the desire to face these challenges together, choosing rather than being a victim of, and then setting up this environmental transition in production, consumption, and regeneration. We've heard different points of views. We've heard about positions that are quite different, and this is what's so good about your business. So now we have to apply this. So cooperation, this is the word that came up the most frequently. Cooperation, this is what will allow us to move more quickly, to go further. And this will allow us to build long-lasting alliances. Working on trust, this is vital, so that we can build this vision of the future that we're going to carry forward all together, the role of Europe. I heard that you liked this. It was interesting to see how the European framework will allow us to work on this harmonized vision of things for refashion. So we've got, so it's a dream like any others. So the challenges of collection, performance, that needs funding. And above all, it needs to industrialize things so that they can reach objectives which are very ambitious that we all want to carry at French level, at European level. To do this, cooperation is vital. And the role of an econ organization is to motivate all the different players. So thank you to you all. Thank you for being here with us. I'd like to wish you a nice end of day, and we'll see you very shortly together. We have lots of meetings that are coming up in the future. We'll be seeing you next year for the 5th edition of Refashion Day. Cooperate with your neighbors. So you have to talk to your neighbor on your right and left. It's more difficult at home, but I'm sure you can find somebody to talk to. Basically, everything is based on cooperation. Thank you to you all, and see you very shortly.